Hi guys, and welcome to our third video of our Diverse Perspectives video series on Bedford Against Racism. This one is on refugees and asylum seekers, and today we have Kylie with us, our founder, who decided to have a baby and then start an anti-racist movement, and then she just sort of, went off and did her baby, and now she's back and, she's doing things. And today we have with us is Matt Robinson, who works for the Fresh Start Project in Coventry, working with refugees and asylum seekers, and he's going to give us a lovely presentation. Then we're going to ask him some lovely questions afterwards.
That's good.
Hi,
Matt. Hi, Matt. Nice to meet you. Could you just tell us a little bit about the work that you do with the Fresh Start Project, particularly in Coventry?
That's right. So I work for the charity Together for Change. Fresh Start is a project with that which works with newly arrived asylum seekers and refugees, and we really run social projects, I guess, that aimed at like bringing people together. So we do conversational English groups, we do various football teams and football sessions. We've run film clubs in the past. We've run a choir in the past. Sort of like different events that can bring people together around shared sort of social events. So I've been doing it for about four years now, something like that.
Amazing.
Yeah. So yeah, at the moment it's obviously a bit strange with COVID. Football's been off and then on and then off and then on, like everything else. But that should come back in April. But we've still been able to do some a combination of online English groups and also some face-to-face groups as a kind of support group for people who don't have internet access and just are sort of very isolated and lonely at the moment.
Yeah, I can imagine if you've just come here and you've come here sort of in these times when it's really hard to sort of meet people, it's even more isolating than it would be usually.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a hard year for and people who are coming here as asylum seekers, don't get Wi-Fi in their houses, and they might have all have smartphones, but you don't get that much data out of it. So accessing online provision is not always the most straightforward. So yeah, it's not been particularly straightforward, and it is quite a lonely, isolating existence actually. Often as an asylum seeker, a lot of people come on their own, and yeah, how this project started was I used to be a volunteer at the Coventry Refugee and Migrant Centre, teaching English as a second language, and it was in one of my classes. I was chatting to some of the guys, and one of them he's from Sudan, and he turned to me one day and he sort of said, we want to make friends with people here, because like we come to these classes and they're great, and we go to the refugee centre for help and it's great, we get professional support, but they said that like the only people we ever know who aren't from our own community are on a sort of professional to client basis. And they say like we actually do want to get to know people on a social level who aren't just from Sudan, for example, but we don't have the language, we lack the confidence in the language. Culturally, we're not sure like how do you sort of go about making friends when you're new to it in a brand new country. So that's kind of what the motivation was for starting this project.
So what are the tips on welcoming refugees in as a church?
That's a good question. So I have recently started leading a church for Christian asylum seekers and refugees, so I'm having to ask this question a lot. I'd say a really good thing is if you can translate stuff, that makes a big difference, because not all refugees. Some refugees are fluent in English, but I would say generally it's always good to have if you can translate some of the stuff. So when we do our evening service now, we have the Bible reading. We'll have it in the Good News translation on one side because it's a relatively easy-ish to understand English version, and on the back in their language. So when we do a Bible study, I'll ask everyone to read it through in their own language first, and then we'll read it together in English, and then the discussion will be in English, but we try and have translators helping. So it's hard. It is hard because a lot of people have come often from not just different languages, but very different traditions in terms of how they worship and stuff like that. But I think just you can go a very long way just by being really welcoming. I think often that's coming back to my sort of previous question about needs. people are sort of craving community and craving welcome, and if you can do that, if you can invite somebody around for dinner after church, and have a meal together and hang out a bit, that the sort of actual worship on a Sunday bit, it'll happen. You'll figure out, like, if you can translate stuff, it's good. But actually, what people most want is fellowship and community, and to pray together. And it's almost like simpler is better, I guess. So yeah, if you can kind of have a community, like, sort of really welcome people into the community, have meals together, have a sort of try and build those sort of friendships, pray together. I think that's probably the key thing that you can do.
Sounds nice.
Yeah.
How can we pray for the Fresh Start project as well?
Yeah, it'd be good to pray. It'd be good to pray for our Sunday evenings. Would be good. It started as a Bible study about 6 weeks ago. January, early Jan, a couple of months ago, and it's supposed to be just like a Bible study and prayer for some of the Christian guys I know. So there's like 4 or 5 of us, but it's really increased. We've now got like 25, 30 people maybe, which is amazing. But I guess it's kind of like it's getting more of a challenge of how to, like, it's not just like a simple Bible study and prayer with a few people it's kind of grown to more like a service, I guess. So it'd be good to pray for that. But it'd be really good to pray for pray for the people that we're meeting with at the moment who are, I think, really for their mental health. There's a lot of people are really struggling with their mental health. People who've, the whole country's kind of gone through a sort of collective, I don't know what the word is. I want to say trauma. I don't know if that's the right word, but kind of a huge collective challenge with COVID. It's going on for, nearly 12 months now. We've been in lockdown effectively, with a bit of a respite in the middle. But yeah, for asylum seekers and refugees, it's that, but amplified really, because most of the support that was running pre-COVID has gone. There was a lot more in Coventry this time last year than there is now, on offer for people. And it's a long time, and all the systems are now clogged up, massively clogged up, waiting. So an already overburdened, slow system has basically got worse. So it'd just be really good to pray over them, just for God's protection and God's peace, I think. And there's not a huge amount we can do really. That's the thing that's hardest, is kind of, you can often see so much need, but we're kind of slightly powerless really to sort of do much apart from try and do a few things we can. But God, we have to sort of trust that God's bigger, God's got it. So yeah, prayer for that would be good. I mean, one thing I did want to say, is that actually something I've learned the hard way really, is that God often speaks to us through people we would least expect. And I found that, I guess, when I started this work, and it probably still happens to an extent, there's a slightly sort of arrogant, like, oh, I'm going to here to help this person. Like it's sort of like a one-way thing, but it's not at all. It's actually very, very mutual. And Jesus says in Matthew 25, for I was hungry and you gave me something to eat, and I was a stranger and you welcomed me. And the disciples say, well, when did this happen? He's like, whatever you did to someone you think of the least of my brothers, you did it to me. And I've definitely experienced that, where Jesus has ministered to me through the relationships I've built with asylum seekers, whether they're Christian or Muslim, to be honest with you. I've really felt the power of God through my friendships with my Sudanese friends who are Muslim, and when we've prayed together, I've been to the mosque together with these guys. They've come to church with us. Like, we've shared food. It's kind of, yeah, I think the way that a lot of them live out their lives and the faith that they have is so inspiring, despite all the challenges mentioned earlier with the Home Office and systems and all that sort of thing. Actually, most of the time, people are just like joyful, I guess. Thankful to God for small things. Thankful to God that they've got £39 a week to live on, which is enough to get food. And I'm like, if I had £39, I don't know if I'd be particularly thankful for it. But actually, I kind of, well, I can still put food on the table with this money. It's just a kind of, and a real radical generosity as well, which I think churches can learn from, Christians can learn from, really, is kind of the sort of view on money of like, a lot of people, Muslims and Christians, asylum seekers, like, my money's not really my money. It's like it's God's money, like God's provision, and actually I need to use it however God wants it to me. So I felt a bit embarrassed sometimes when I've been round to a guy's house and I know he's living on £37 a week and he's prepared like a massive feast. I'm like, man, like, this must have cost quite a lot of money, and money that I know that you don't really have in abundance particularly. But just that like desire to bless and just to be like, no, like, you're my guest, you're my friend. I want to put on a massive, like, I want to eat together and do it properly, sort of thing. And it's like, yeah, it's very challenging, but in a really good sort of faith enhancing sort of way. Yeah.
But I think it's really like sounds amazing, like the selflessness and like the gratefulness, like how grateful they are. Like it sounds like they're learning like and gaining so much from like your friendship with them, but like you're also gaining so much from their friend from your friendship.
Yeah.
Learning about like their culture and like just learning about like how they are in their faith and stuff. It just sounds really interesting.
Yeah, it's really, and I think it's very important to try and maintain that. And it's difficult. It can be difficult to maintain that, but actually, yeah, it's very much a mutual thing. It's not a one-way street. And yeah, it's been cool. I mean, and on a very practical level, one way I've been massively blessed. I moved house a couple of years ago, and quite a stressful thing, moving house and whatnot. And quite a few of the guys basically moved my entire house in like 20 minutes. Like, I told one of them, I said, "What are you doing this weekend?" I was like, "Oh, I'm like, yeah, moving house." And the guys I knew pretty well. And then it was like, okay. They were like, "Oh, do you need help?" And I was like, I mean, maybe, yeah, but it might be good. And they were like, "Don't worry about it. Like, we'll sort it." And they did. They literally moved the whole house in like half an hour. It was unbelievable. And then like later that week, I had a few things like furniture to deliver and whatnot. And again, they were like, "Oh, we'll help." Like, hired a van together, had the day like going around the West Midlands delivering furniture. Yeah, it's just like a kind of a desire to give back, or to give, but not. Yeah, didn't make a big deal of it. It was just like completely natural to them. Yeah, of course. Like, this is like perfectly normal to do this for a friend. But that was really nice. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for talking to us. It's been really informative, and I think it's really nice as well to just hear like your stories firsthand of because sort of if you don't know anyone who's a refugee or an asylum seeker, it seems like a very sort of distant thing that's hard to relate to. But it's really it's really nice. It's really humanizing to sort of hear your lovely stories about them and their generosity as well. Because again, when you hear about they've been through so much, you assume the generosity comes from other people towards them, but they are just as generous, which is lovely. Thanks so much for your time.
That's all right.
It was really lovely talking to you.
And you. Thank you, Beth.